नमस्कार.
Requesting everyone to be on mute.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. We will be starting shortly. Just requesting you to be a little patient more. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Just requesting you to all the audiences be on mute, and in next 2 minutes we'll start with a video, and meanwhile we'll have few more participations coming in, and then we start with our keynote and an intro. Yeah. Just be a little patient and mute yourself, everyone, please. Just a
Thank you.
request.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone, and a very good morning. Before I start, I am requesting everyone to please be on mute when our speakers speak. So, myself, Ekta C. Dubey, on behalf of the team Branalytics and our partner Exetel, we welcome you all and thank you for being part of our webinar, Empowering Customer-Facing Teams in BFSI using Cloud Telephony. To start with, customer experience is a key brand differentiator in 2020. This is true for all businesses, including those in the BFSI sector. That's why banking and financial institutions are working towards solving customer communication challenges. But they have to solve those problems under a lot of constraints, government regulations, wavering customer loyalties, and competitions from changing business models. Cloud communication offers a simple solution to these problems. BFSI's move to the cloud recently saw an increase due to pandemic. The primary reason for this move was to empower customer-facing teams to work without hindrances to provide customers with the best experiences possible. Today, as we gather here, let me highlight the focus areas of the webinar, like adoption of cloud in the BFSI sector, the key challenges and the opportunities, how cloud telephony can help empower customer-facing teams in sales calling, RM connects, customer support, creating better customer experience, ensuring compliance and business continuity with cloud telephony. Before we start our keynote, I would like to introduce our partner, Exetel. Exetel is one of the Asia's largest cloud telephony companies, working with 4,500 plus businesses, including top enterprises and startups. They solve communication problems for various industries, be it e-commerce, cab aggregators, BFSI, or fintech. In the BFSI industry alone, they work with some of the top organizations like ICICI Bank, HDFC Bank, IDFC Bank, HDFC Securities, ABCL, Bajaj Finserv, MoneyTap, Zerodha, etc. Now, starting with our keynote session, I'm delighted to invite Raman Kishore, who is Lead Business Evangelist, Exetel. Raman has played an instrumental role at Exetel in researching and coming up with personalized solutions for different verticals and geographies. In the past 5 years, he has worked with numerous enterprises in various industries to solve their communication challenges through cloud telephony. He will be sharing his insights on empowering customer-facing teams by gaining visibility in customer conversations. Thank you, Raman, for being here. And over to you, Raman. Thank you. Raman, you have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you able to see my screen? Are you able to see the...
Yeah, it started, Raman. Yeah, we can.
Okay. All right. Hey guys, thank you so much for the introduction, Ekta. It most definitely is a pleasure to be speaking amongst you all. As Ekta mentioned, my name is Raman. I handle enterprise marketing for Exetel. In fact, today I'm going to be talking about how cloud telephony is actually playing a key role in empowering customer-facing teams in BFSI. In fact, we will also be covering how the pandemic has actually accelerated the process of cloud telephony adoption in the BFSI industry. Also, one second, yeah. We'll also follow that up with how some of the customer-facing teams, like your sales teams, RM teams, and also your collection teams are affected or rather benefited by this adoption. And in the end, we'll also cover what are some of the concerns or challenges that most companies see before moving on to cloud communication. All right. So before any further delay, we'll directly jump into it. In fact, if you've observed in the last 6 months or so, there surely has been like a rapid growth in the cloud telephony adoption since the pandemic has started. Again, just to give you a rough estimate, we at Exetel itself have onboarded over like 20 organizations specifically from the BFSI industry since the lockdown itself. In fact, this includes some of the top banks, insurance companies, broking companies, and financial institutions like Ekta mentioned. In fact, though the initial objective of this shift was to ensure business continuity and also to enable remote working, soon companies started to realize and started to see cloud telephony as a means to empower customer-facing teams to work without any hindrance or any hassles, and also to provide your customers the best possible experience. In fact, like you can see, in fact, institutions in the BFSI sector are actually increasingly realizing that cloud telephony goes beyond remote work itself, right? There are many opportunities and ways in which financial institutions can actually benefit from it. That is like what you can see on the screen being the most important of them all. The first one is basically to create a kick-ass customer experience, right? And second is to gain more visibility. That is to try and get a complete view on your team's productivity. At the same time, to gain insights from that you can use to better your processes and make them more efficient. In fact, this actually reminds me of a real life example when my mother was actually looking to set up a bank account a couple of months back, in fact, during the pandemic itself. The entire process itself was so smooth and was done within like few hours, if I'm not wrong, right? In fact, all of it was done from the comfort of home, and it was completely contactless. In fact, as soon as she signed up, she actually got a call from one of the sales executives, and who then guided her through the entire process of onboarding. And also he sent her links with where she could upload her documents for verification purpose. And later on, he also sent her a link, a video link over an SMS, through which she got on a video call with the executive, and he then used this video call to verify all her documents. Post that, it was just smooth sailing. In fact, after that, she had to just wait for a couple of hours, and then she got everything done. The entire onboarding process itself was extremely simple and smooth. In fact, the key reason for this positive experience was the use of technology at every step of the verification process, if you think about it, right? In fact, my mother got guidance that she needed at literally every step of the way, just staying at home. I barely had to help her, which I generally do when it comes to most of the tech stuff, but she did it completely by herself, right? So this kind of shows our, in fact, voice communication has played a very crucial role in enriching the customer experience, which shows how cloud telephony is not just about enabling remote teams, but also it goes beyond it, right? The fact that the response times was so fast implies that the whole process was being tracked and monitored, and also the sales executives were held accountable for all their communications. So this shows how tracking customer communication itself can have a direct impact and also can lead to better results in your organizations. In fact, moving on, let's take a look at how cloud telephony can help some of the customer-facing teams individually. I mean, before that, I wanted to ask you guys a couple of questions before we move on to the benefits. Like, what do you think is, let's take a look at the first question. What do you think is the average first response time in the BFS industry? That is the time from which I sign up or you sign up and you get your first call. What do you think is the average response time? You guys can just ping on the chat, or you guys can unmute yourself and just let me know your answers. Go guys, just take a wild guess. Okay. Yeah, pretty much, guys. I mean, if you're wondering, it takes anywhere between 2 to 3 days, right? Like, in fact, I ran this experiment myself, and when I actually signed up for the top 10 banks, top 10 to 15 banks, actually, I signed up, and then I was waiting for my first call. And in fact, it took me on an average, at least minimum a day and a half, right? But this, what does the study show? Study actually shows that 90% of your warm leads decay within 4 to 5 hours, right? So this, despite this, despite that, the first response or first average response time is close to 2 to 3 days, and sometimes even more. So let's quickly jump to the second question. How many leads do you think, that is, what percentage of leads in the BFSI sector actually moves to your second follow-up and then moves to your third follow-up? Could you just give me a quick answer here? Like, what percentage of leads, if there are 100 leads coming in, what percentage of these leads actually move to second follow-up? That is, if there's a follow-up required. You can just raise your hands, or you can just unmute yourself, or you can just tap in the chat window, type in the chat window, guys. Okay, guys. I mean, if you're wondering, like 30% of the leads, I mean, roughly about 30% of the leads that are to be called back in the second follow-up doesn't even reach the second follow-up, and in fact, 70% of these leads don't even reach the third follow-up. So these stats clearly show that there's a massive gap in the customer communication itself within the BFSI industry, specifically with sales teams, where your time is of essence and tracking response times and also follow-ups becomes extremely crucial, right? But these inefficiencies aren't only limited to your sales teams. In fact, they also carry on to your RM teams, that is your relationship manager teams, and also to your collection teams. They also face very similar challenges, if you think about it. The lack of adhering to suggested your callback times and kind of affects your performance itself of each of these teams. Now, we'll actually take a look at how exactly this affects each of these teams individually. In fact, we'll start with the sales team. As you can see, in fact, sales team is one of the most affected teams during the pandemic itself, primarily because this is the team that brings in the customers. And since they had to work remotely and had to work from home, it was one of the most affected teams during the pandemic. However, like, having worked with some of these companies specifically during the pandemic, we were able to help decrease the sales conversion rate, or I mean, improve the sales conversion rate by not just enabling remote working for these guys, but also by decreasing their response times and also increasing their pickup rates. Again, conversion rates is one of the most important parameters that most sales teams track. Please correct me if I'm wrong. In fact, conversion rate is basically how many leads came into your sales team and how many did they convert, right? And if you think about it, this number is very directly connected to your basically response times and also your pickup rates. Like, to give you a rough estimate of one of the insurance companies that we work with, we were able to improve their conversion rate by roughly about 10%. By just increasing the pickup rate from almost 15 to 35%. This clearly shows that there is a direct impact that the pickup rate has on your conversion rate. And also it also shows the importance of tracking your response times and follow-up times, and if possible, automating them, right? So we'll move on to the next team or the other customer phase. Let's take RM team for example. In fact, these challenges exist even without the pandemic, right? That is, most of the conversations done by RM to their HNIs or their privileged bankers happens through their mobile phones. Again, the SLA that most companies track or most organizations track is how many times is the RM engaging with the HNI, right? In fact, most companies have an SLA of about 3 to 5 times roughly every HNI is to be engaged every month, right? But how do you know whether or not he's being engaged? You might have a tracking system for your emails, you might have a tracking system for your chat, SMS, and etc. But how do you know whether your agent is actually calling your HNI customers? So this is something that we were able to help companies with. We were able to, or cloud telephony rather, would help you, give you a much more in like direct visibility into what is happening with respect to your RM teams. So you'll have complete productivity in place, and you'll also be able to check whether they're compliant with their SLAs or not. In fact, moving on, I think the next team or the other team that is most generally affected is the collection teams. In fact, collection team itself has what is one of the biggest problems that any financial institution faces, right? Again, it is a problem that has a lot of causes and etc. But one of the major hello. Hi, sorry. Okay, guys. Yeah, collection is one of the major problems most financial institutions actually face. So, in fact, one second, I think. All right. Okay. All right, guys. So collection team, in fact, collections is one of the major problems that most companies face. Again, how is this affected or how is it related to communication? In fact, if you think about it, this also is a kind of related to your pickup rates. That is, your conversion rate is almost directly dependent on how many people pick up your reminder calls. So the more people who actually pick up your reminder calls, it actually kind of has a direct impact. At least this is what we've seen with the customers that we've worked with, right? In fact, we were able to up their conversion rate, that is the number of people who are actually paying, by just increasing the number of pickup rates on their reminder calls, be it automated calls or be it like manual calls, right? So if you actually notice, we were able to improve the efficiencies of each of these teams by helping them track and monitor their customer communication, specifically voice. Therefore, call tracking becomes vital for almost every customer facing teams and not just your customer support teams. So in fact, now we'll actually take a look at, we just went over how cloud telephony can actually address some of the challenges faced by your customer facing teams. We can now take a look at what are the challenges that hinder or what are the concerns that most financial institutions have before moving to cloud communications. Like you can see, I think the first one itself is your on-prem infrastructure, right? Most companies already have an on-prem solution. Rather, traditionally, most organizations in the BFS industry work with legacy communication systems. Again, what do I mean by this, right? You would have actually seen when you stepped into your, say, any of your calling teams, it can be a customer support team, you would see a EPBX box with PRA lines and lots of wires and which are connected to your soft phones, desk phones, and etc. And your customers are calling, right? So this system kind of works, but however, it kind of needs to integrate seamlessly into your tech layer of your organization. And also it needs to cater to your future requirements. But unfortunately, most of these traditional systems are unable to provide such a functionality or flexibility that any modern BFSI institution looks for, right? And in fact, most importantly, these systems are very location dependent. What do I mean by location dependent? That is, you would need a physical space with soft phones and with a lot of capex to set up this kind of a customer communication system or platform. In fact, this might work for a full-fledged call center team, but not so much for your other customer-facing teams, which are mostly working on the field, or given the current scenario where most of them are actually working from home, right? So it becomes very important to have a system that supports both, that has a flexibility to support both your on-prem kind of solution that is in-office workers and also for your work from home and on-field solutions, right? Or you can have a hybrid of two, right? So in fact, the second concern that most companies have is data security. Definitely, right? So customer communication within the banking industry involves highly sensitive customer information. So therefore, it becomes very important to understand whether or not the platform that you're going to use or going to choose has the capability to protect your data. Actually, if you have an on-prem solution, the chances are a cloud telephony based solution would be able to give you a better security. Let me back this up, right? So having worked with some of these top banks and top broking companies, like you saw in the previous slides, right? Say, be it ICICI Bank, HDFC Bank, Zerodha, ABCL, or anyone for that matter, we've come to realize that most companies look for a set of things when it comes to data security. At least when it comes to data security for implementing cloud solution for their customer facing teams. Like be it on-prem or be it cloud-based solutions, here's what most organizations look for. One, they look for security certifications. That is, does the platform adhere to industry's standard security policies, right? Your ISO certifications and your GDPR compliances would be actually a good starting point. And also companies generally check, they have their own security compliances which they check for, right? The second thing that most companies look for is your two-factor authentications. That is to prevent any kind of unauthorized logins, whether the company is able to monitor and make sure that there is no unauthorized logins whatsoever, right? And the other thing that most companies look for is your network level encryption. What do I mean by network level encryption? Again, I don't want to go too technical. Basically, it is to help whether the vendor that you're going to choose, be it cloud telephony or on-prem, whether they're able to protect your data in transit. That is, when data is going from point A to point B, whether they're able to encrypt and protect the data in transit, and also to make sure whether this entire transition of data stays within the country, right, within India, specifically for BFSI industries. And the fourth thing that people look for is your audit logging and monitoring. That is, being able to know at all point in time who is accessing your platform, right? Which becomes very vital when you're accessing such sensitive information. And the last thing that most companies look for is your whether the platform is able to back your data and or has a recovery plan. This is to make sure there is no way to lose any kind of data, because most companies, most industries under the BFSI umbrella, be it your banking, be it your broking, or be it your insurance, or be it any NBFC or anyone for that matter, has their own duration of for how long they should keep the conversations. It could be for 9 months, it could be for 1 year, 6 years, to even 9 years, right? So you need to be sure that the platform that you're going to use has a good data backup plan or a recovery plan. And in fact, I mean, it's needless to say that cloud communication platform actually checks all of these boxes. Well, at least Exital sure does. In fact, therefore, if you think about it, cloud telephony actually offers you not just a scalable and a reliable platform, but also a very highly secure platform as well. So yes, guys, I think that's about it from my side. If you have any questions, we can look at the questions. If not, we can jump into the panel discussion straight away.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Raman, for the interesting session. Guys, we are open for the Q&A. I have set certain guidelines on the chat box that you need to raise your hands, take your name, introduce your name, company, and organization, and put your question to Raman, and he'll take it up from there. So do we have any question? You can directly ask Raman, please.
We can probably look at it after the panel discussion also, so that we'll have more people to answer the questions. Ikta, like if that's okay.
Am I audible? Okay, Raman, do you want me to take the panel now? Can we introduce the panel?
Yeah, we can
take the Q&A later. Perfect.
Yeah, we can do the Q&A after the panel.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, moving further to our panel discussion. The topic is using cloud telephony to improve CX in the BFSI sector with real world examples. Now, again, I'm glad to invite Raman Kishore, who is moderating the panel, and he would be introducing all the fellow panelists and taking over the session. Thank you, Raman. Over to you.
Thank you again, Ekta. Again, guys, welcome to our panel discussion. Again, for today's discussion, we will be talking about, like Ekta mentioned, how cloud telephony could be used to improve customer experience in the BFSI sector with more real life examples. So I gave you about like the challenges that is being faced and how cloud telephony caters to it from what we have worked at. But now we have industry leaders from across banks and insurance companies who will help you with some real life examples, and we will like brainstorm on how cloud telephony or voice communication can be used. In fact, we have some of the top industry leaders with us today. We have Ashish Nasa. He's Executive Vice President from Equitas Small Finance Bank. We have Ankit Goenka from Bajaj Allianz General Insurance. He heads the customer experience team for them. We also have Amala Margaret, who is the DGM and head customer service for Chola MS General Insurance. Like we can get started, guys. Like as in, I mean, these gentlemen will be sharing their thoughts on the use of cloud communication to improve CX. In fact, let's get started with a quick round of introduction of each of our panelists. We can get started with Mr. Rashish, and we can go.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, yes, Ashish.
Yeah, hi, Raman. Thank you so much for a quick introduction. So I take care of relationship management teams in Equitas. Okay. And as you highlighted some of the good things about cloud telephony, we have been internally debating about it for a while now in terms of continuing with the on-premises solution or moving on to cloud telephony, given the kind of benefits or pros and cons it offers. I think over a period of time during the panel with some of the questions planned, we'll discuss it in detail with various questions. Yeah,
definitely, Ashish. Amala or Ankit, one of you can introduce yourself and then go on. Go for it. We can start with you, Amala, please.
Hi, thank you, Raman. Thank you for the introduction. And yeah, I work for Chola MS. I've handled the customer service out there. When it comes to cloud, I think it's something which has really helped us, especially during these pandemic times, where continuity of business has been enabled on account of this. And especially being at customer service, we actually have been able to stay in touch with our customers, yet maintaining the social distance. It is actually defined that work is not defined by a physical place. We can work wherever we are, whether it is customer service, operations, or whatever be the function that you work for. So yeah,
definitely, most definitely
part of the panel.
Definitely, I think that's, in fact, that's the first question that we'll jump in detail about it a little more. Ankit, if you can just quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, Raman and everyone. My name is Ankit Goenka, and I head the customer experience for Bajaj Allianz General Insurance. Right, and cloud, as my co-panelist Amla and Ashish mentioned, right, is here to stay. Right, people do get those little nightmares that what about the data security and all those things. But trust me, cloud actually going to solve all those, right? So looking forward for the discussion. I guess we can quickly get into the discussion.
Definitely. Thank you so much, guys, for your introductions. I mean, without any delay, we'll directly jump into it. As in fact, most of our panelists mentioned, even Ms. Amala mentioned about it. The pandemic has surely affected, like there's no doubt it has affected most of the industries, right? Specifically our BFSI industry. Well, most of them have starting to recover as well, and they're doing well. At least they're slowly doing well, right? But it has affected in two ways, right? One, it has affected the business from a business continuity standpoint, and also two, it is affected from a customer journey or customer expectation standpoint, right? We can split the two and talk about both of them. We can look at what are the challenges that the business faced from a business continuity standpoint. Each of you can share your thoughts on that. Post that, we can also see how the customer expectation has raised since the pandemic itself, and how then we can also take a look at what are the steps that you guys have been taking or have been doing to basically meet this rising challenges or rising expectations of the customers, right? We can take this one by one, guys. We can start with you, Amala. Go ahead.
So when it comes to the customer expectation, today's customer, he has a knowledge of everything that is available, and the expectation of the customer is that swift service and seamless journey and a completely digital transaction. So for example, today there is, though in the insurance world, there's a lot of, face-to-face interface. Today the same thing can be completed through an online transaction, be it an intimation of a claim, or be it buying a policy, a customer engagement, taking a CSAT score for that matter, or for that matter, even going ahead with renewal of any insurance. So
Correct.
one thing which is very essential is to ensure that there is no pitfall in any part of the journey. So wherever it is, especially when we migrated, all of a sudden when March 24th was declared as it's going to be a total lockdown, still there was no shutdown of our services, since the IVRs, our integrated voice response system, already had a facility of self-service. So customers were still able to keep in touch with customers. They could retrieve policies, they could renew policies. So any service which was very, a matter of routine, it was very easy for the customers to actually handle it. It was more of the cases which required a human touch that is getting transferred to the human agent. So as a result of which this journey, since we had started it a couple of months prior to the lockdown, it actually helped us. And furthermore, one step forward moving, we have also enabled, automation in terms of voice calls. So there are renewals can be done through automated voice calls. So there, the customer can, it's by the listening to an automated voice, and through a link, he can go ahead and renew the policy. So all these enablers have actually helped the customer to continue his journey with us without any hindrance. It has been frictionless, seamless, and the engagement is on.
That's great. In fact, that's very well put across, right? She covered both, I think, how customer expectation was raising and how did they meet it, and also even the business point. I mean, Ashish, I think you had a point too.
Yeah, I just wanted to share. I'm audible?
Yes, Ashish.
Okay, yeah. Just wanted to share. So how did, chronology-wise, what happened to us? So before the pandemic, it is obviously a business as usual. No, business as usual means what? Business as usual means that your dependence as a business is very, very high on customer-facing channels. You believe that a customer-facing channels, which is a face-to-face meeting, can give you large ticket sizes. You believe that Indian consumer is not right up to the mark as yet to be fully educated on the internet platforms. You believe that even if the customer is educated, even if there is a sufficient amount of education, the behavior is not aligned to coming and buying things on their own. Now, then pandemic hits you, and then while the consumer is thinking and feared about the pandemic reaction, the pressure falls on the business to somehow continue. As Amala said, how do you continue the businesses? First 5-6 days, we are bothered as an individual itself, because all the so-called businessmen are individual themselves, and they are going through the same fear. And then 7th day, you realize that, what if it lasts long? You have to have triggered somewhere of business continuity. And it's a BCP that nobody planned for. So it's a BCP that changes with the whole point altogether, because it's not location specific. It's something that everything is shut, and you still got to continue business so that you can survive. And there comes the immediate VC huddles, telephone calls within the management to understand what is the best way to do business in this kind of a scenario. And all the technology comes into picture. Now, one of the significant changes that I personally witnessed by most of the organizations, including ours, is the technology was a step baby, which means technology will do business on its own. People will do business face to face, and the both pieces are not marrying together. Suddenly, pandemic hitting, both pieces start marrying together from the day one, because face to face it cannot happen. So face to face also starts relying on the technology. So what happens is you suddenly start saying that you're existing all the people that you have, whom you're responsible for as an employee, whom you took over to join them in the part of your own business growth stories. You want them to succeed using the technology rather than treating themselves as independent of technology, while technology is, as a step baby, is doing business on its own. So sort of we call it a sort of a phygital approach comes into picture. There is a physical body who is running behind the technology in order to try the technology successful. So what's happened in the hindsight now, I feel, is that all the employees were trying to make the technology successful because they wanted to make themselves successful. And suddenly you realize that technology actually becomes successful over a period of next 6 months. Now, And this did not happen for particular business. Now, insurance is a perfect example Ramila gave. You gave a perfect example of your mother opening a bank account, Raman, which I want to spend time as the next thing that you said about the consumer, this thing. Now, consumer is forced, and forced is the right word, forced initially to look into the technology. Now, consumer also cannot say that I'm not behaviorally comfortable with it as yet, because that's the only way you can deal with it. So initially forced, and I would say later adapted to it. So that adaptation has significantly happened. The discomfort of usage of technology has gone away because the adaptation has happened rapidly. So the consumer behavior has changed. Somewhere the reluctance on the part of technology teaching everything is there. Now, these are all the good sides. Having said it, my understanding is there is a negative side as well, where the technology is the only way to means to engage. Even in phygital, what we cite is that what I personally felt is that institutionalization somewhere has gone down, which means a face-to-face business, when you're explaining everything, you're trying to make a relationship, you're not selling a product, you're selling yourself. There's a lot of emotions in between. There's a lot of personality involvement in between. Now the personality is missing. Since the personality is missing, the institutionalization of a product is not fully there. And that is where I believe even the cloud telephony or any kind of telephony or any kind of an engagement comes into picture. Say, for example, let me take the same example that you said your mother was buying a bank account or taking a bank account. While somebody did help, but imagine the same conversation happening physical in a pre-COVID world. She would probably know all the 20, 30 features of it, what she can do with her debit card, whether she can take an ATM card or she can take a credit card also, or can you sell her 2-3 more products? Or she understands fully all the features. She understands the likelihood, the discount, what can happen, what will happen when her birthday comes and all that. Those communications, those awareness somewhere stay incomplete. And that becomes the next challenge for teams in the business, that once everybody in the institution is running behind to make technology successful, and it does give you numbers, it does give you values, your business continuity is not impacted, consumer behavior has changed, has the institutionalization happened? And that's what I feel that's where I feel that's a question which is there now. And that's where exactly the engagement over the phone can help. So that's about my understanding of what has happened in the last 6 months, 1 year, and why it was very difficult prior, and how it is, how everybody is adapted to it.
That's very well put, Ashish. I mean, thank you so much. Yeah. I mean, it was perfect, right? Like, I think, like you mentioned, though the shift has happened, is not just happened from the business standpoint towards using the technology, but it's also happened on the customer standpoint. Even customers are moving more and more closer towards using technology to the fullest. In fact, that also poses a threat of whether their expectations are going to rise exponentially in the coming years or so. We'll probably tackle that in the next question. Ankit, if you can share your thoughts on the same.
Yeah, so the way I look at it, Raman, I agree with Ashish and Amla completely, so I'll not repeat what they said, right? But I want to give a different, perspective and a practical view, what I actually saw, when I looked at our customers and our processes. So as Amla mentioned, March 24th, lockdown got announced, right? While we were prepared, we had already got into the cloud telephony solution, so we were absolutely prepared to do work from home, right? But I don't think so many people actually thought that, a call center, inbound service call center can run from homes, right? Individual homes. Because look at the practical side of it, right? These people, typically a large population is those who are perhaps living in a hostel, living in, a PG, right? And, let's say there are, young women who are recently married, they are living in a joint family. Now we are asking them to actually take those calls from their home, right? While we did that, right? Because the technology, the cloud telephony, thanks to that, it allowed us to route that calls, to individual, homes. But look at the practicality, the girl is there on the call and the mother-in-law is shouting from the back that I need tea, right? So that's the practical aspect, we actually saw during the pandemic, right? So what we did, we actually said that while yes, call centers can run on telephony, but let's look at the DIY and digital combination, right? Do it yourself and digital. And we immediately did a massive communication regarding WhatsApp. because we said that WhatsApp is the closest and the most preferred channel today for any individual. You know, in the morning, you wake up, the first thing that most of us actually do is check our WhatsApp, right? So we said that this WhatsApp is the, channel, to promote, right? At the same time, we started converted inbound to outbound by using the missed call and short code SMS technology, where we said that let's make it more controlled environment rather than, make it open as inbound where, a call can come anytime and can get routed to anybody who's available based on certain logics. Let's, control that into an outbound piece, right? And use the entire, voice, cloud voice, telephony to actually enable that, right? So that's what we did. And the results were great. We actually saw during the pandemic, nothing less than 80% of our customer footprints got serviced through do it yourself and digital, which used to be, around 20% pre-pandemic. And from a customer expectation, just, tying that knot, as the unlock phase started, we are seeing a slight shift towards the voice call center again, but not massive. Still we are right now at around 70%, digital and do it yourself servicing. 30% is there at the call centers, right? So that's what, I saw during the pandemic.
Oh, that's thank you so much, Ankit. So in fact, that actually kind of leads to our next question, right? That is, I think there's been a lot of automations that's taken place, and a lot of customers are actually looking to do most of the things that by themselves, which they were not used to do. At least, like Ashish mentioned, they were initially forced into it, but now they're feeling more and more comfortable with all these automations and DIY, do it yourself, and doing most of them on the app and etc. But still, there is a lot of prompting that is required, or rather, like there's still a lot of communication gap. Like again, like Ashish had mentioned, where like a lot of benefits when you take banking, for example, there's a lot of things that happens in a physical space that may not directly transfer to a virtual space, right? Where you need to give the customer all the information that they need. You can still guide them, but how do you do this in a more structured way of sorts, right? So in fact, for the next question, we can talk about how voice communication plays a key role when it comes to customer experience, right? And we can also talk about how different parameters that we generally track, like your first response times, like your turnaround times, or wrap times, and etc. Right? That any team, any customer-facing team, it can be your sales team, for them your conversion rate matters. It can be a collection team, for them your collection rate matters, or even for your RM team, your engagement rate. That is how often are your customers actually engaged to either upsell or attend to their HNI queries, right? So how were these parameters affected? And how were you able to, or what are the steps that you took to make sure the voice communication that happened was smooth and it kind of transitioned smoothly, like before and after pandemic? If you guys could throw some light, that would be great.
Yeah, so I'll start this time, Raman.
Sure.
During the pandemic, when you specifically talk about those voice metrics, right? Now, typically, when we talk about the call center, the first thing that perhaps comes to us is average handling time, right? And thankfully, in our business, we actually don't really worry about the ASTs, right? And we say that, if somebody has called, somebody has taken that pain to give you a call, right? You need to respect that and give that adequate time to that caller and ensure that you give the right amount of time and the information, right? But the change that we actually saw during that, pandemic is because people were at home, right? On the lighter note, they tend to, talk more, right? And the average handling times actually went up, right? Because they wanted to talk, a lot of stuff, right? But at the same time, it actually gave us the opportunity to cross-sell, right? Because the other person on the other side, had the time to listen. Because in normal course, people, when they call, the customers, when they call, they are very, direct about their issue, and they say that, okay, I need this, I need the resolution, that's it. They don't want to get into that, further interaction of cross-sell, because typically, how do you do a cross-sell on an inbound service? You resolve the issue, right? Which is the first time resolution that we talk about. And then you pitch, the next best product, right? Now we actually saw an uptake there, right? Because people, started listening to us more during the pandemic because they had time, right? So that was an opportunity, that we saw, and we actually saw a good uptake there, right? First time response and first time right. we saw that if you're able to give, your caller, the customer, the first time resolution, the NPS is around 96%. But if you are not able to do that, the NPS actually dropped down from 96 to 60.
Okay.
Right. So that's a clear, no-brainer that you need to empower, your front-end executives. You need to trust them more, right? Because I guess the thing which most of the organizations fail to do that is, while they want, these executives, the callers on the call center to be the point of contact, but they don't really trust them, right? And when I say they don't really trust them, is where they're not empowering them. Because if you empower, that is an inherent trust that you're showing, to those people, right? So that's what we did, right? We ensured that, they're empowered to take certain calls, on the fly. They're empowered to, issue the policy, for example, on the call, right? Empowered to do the renewal on the call, empowered to, take care of the claims on the call, right? So that's the various things that we, saw, and we made those changes, and we are continuing with that, right? And we are seeing that, as I said, the NPS is actually going up.
That's great, Ankit. I think that's good you brought that up. In fact, I think that's what most companies are looking to move towards, right? Where they're looking to empower their teams with more than what they could do, right? Like, for example, by just showing them all the data points, they will have enough data points to service to the customers. At least give them the satisfaction whether or not they'll be able to solve their challenge as soon as possible, right? So I think the first step towards that is going towards moving towards one dashboard for all, right? Like instead of toggling between multiple dashboards and multiple teams, having one dashboard. Imagine having one dashboard with all call recordings and etc. Right?
No, I agree. Omni-channel and multi-channel, a combined combination of that. Exactly. And you actually give the customer 360 view to your agent. I guess that solves the entire issue, right? Because your agent is empowered. Your agent has the view of each and everything that has gone to, come from the customer, and that's what is required.
That's true, definitely. Ashish, your thoughts?
So there are two types of products, I think, in the BFSI industry. One, the product is that you sell and you maintain relationship. Second type of products is that you sell in this beginning of the journey. And specifically, I would say the liabilities products or the cross-sell products or are in that nature, where the start of a relationship is meaningless. The journey starts once your relationship starts. Again, the example of your mother opening a bank account. Vis-a-vis in insurance, where a start of a relationship is the done deal. You have a certain things to cater, but if, say, any kind of exigency arises or a renewal time comes, that's the time it's important. Now, specifically in the second product in the industry, it's a very common thing, is a customer lifecycle management. And a customer lifecycle management becomes imperative because the start is meaningless for the bank. So, for example, your mother opening a bank account is meaningless for the bank until unless there are balances, there are transactions, there's a usage, there's a primary banking, so on and so forth. Similarly, for in a BFSI industry, if you are doing into an investments business, for example, you buying a particular, you opening a mutual fund account or you opening a broking account is really meaningless until unless you trade, you build your demat balances, you do broking frequently, and you're making money out of it. You're making profits out of it, because if you're making losses, then eventually you're going to quit one day. So these are all the products where customer lifecycle management becomes very important. Now, the start of the relationship is in itself to an extent forced and adapted. Now, that being done, how do you make sure the customer lifecycle management is taken care of? Because the start is meaningless otherwise. Now, that's where the telephony or that's where the voice conversations becomes extremely important. And the adaptation helps there, given that a customer is mentally prepared that he has bought a product without a faceless manner. And in the same faceless manner, he can probably manage his own customer life cycle from a stage 1 to stage 10, where bank wants him to reach, or where bank believes, or an organization believes, or a broker believes that they can cater to. And customer lifecycle management is all about, I would say it's exactly what telephony is all about. So that can only be done telephony till the time the adaptation to technology at a client reaches a level that he start reading emails, he start understanding emails, he start doing everything, and he becomes financially intelligent, which is not there in most of the even Western countries. So that is something that you would expect not to happen in the next 1 or 2 decades, if not longer, because that's about, in a BFSI space, is about financial knowledge, which is less across the globe, not only in India. So from a CLCM perspective, it is the immediate next problem for every BFSI industry to handle, that how do you manage the customer life cycle? And the role played is nothing else other than telephony at this point in time. In fact, I personally don't foresee any other solution except a telephony sort of solution. This is what I feel at this juncture about the recent change in the technology and what role a telephony has to play, and where does it become critical, especially for those products which are a maintenance product. One has to really grow the relationship with the client.
Definitely. I think most definitely, Ashi. I think there are a lot of products out there, a lot of ways for you to prompt a new customer to buy a product. But I think the next step where customer lifecycle management, I think that is where there's still a lot of scope for improvement, like you mentioned, definitely. And I think telephony is one of the major solutions that can help you keep that engagement going with that customer to make sure he stays on board and he probably looks to buy more products from you. And in fact, I think that is an area where even AI is slowly catching up, where you can actually say, for example, I'm going across the store now, you can push them a notification saying that, okay, if you have a credit card of this, you will get 20% off, right? Something of that sort, right? Again, then you have your whole privacy coming into issue, but still, I'm just giving an example, a thought out there. We'll jump into that next question, but Amla, do you have any points on the same?
Yeah, so I would just like to address this in 2 points. One is from a customer perspective, and the second one is from an employee perspective. So going from a customer perspective, like Ankit said, if you want to really increase your NPS scores, yes, of course, you need to have your first-time resolutions right at the point the customer is calling you. And for this, one of the biggest enabler is having a knowledge tool. So something which is available on your screen for the agent to look at it and immediately communicate to the customer. That's the best experience that you can give to a customer. So that really helps the customer. And also in terms of customer is now available, he can spend some time, the AHT going up. It really actually does not matter as long as we are able to retain the customer. And here, when you look at it, actually the current experience is that customers, in case they want some guidance in terms of buying a policy, in terms of going ahead, renewing their policy, you can even ask the customers to put their phone on speakerphone, guide them through the entire journey, ensure that the process is completed and the customer is completely satisfied. So this really has added value. Here, the agent is also at home, the customer is also at home, and remotely a complete transaction is done. So that is one of the enablers which we have seen over the last 6 months, and it is really catching up well. Now, secondly, if you look at an employee perspective, so one thing which, though we were all talking in terms of working from home and things like that, so how do you actually monitor employee workforce in a remote sense? So that is something which though was there at the back of our mind, which was not tested. So now when you look at it, employee monitoring an employee and ensuring that you get the entire 8-hour or a 9-hour productivity is very, very critical to business, because end of the day, it all lands up in efficiency of the process. So here again, when the technology is such that it's all available in one screen, you know what is the number of calls the agent has answered, what is the AHT, what is the call wrap time, and sitting remote, the team leader, the team manager is able to assess this, give feedbacks. So this is one thing which has also helped us, and thereby it has also ensured that there has not been a productivity dip in the last 6 months.
No, I second that what Amla said, and just want to add a very small point. In Six Sigma, there is a concept which is called idiot proofing. Right, so you make it idiot proof, your processes, your system, and make it, and that becomes the easy for the agent, right? She talked about the knowledge tool and all, the systems that you're giving to your agents, right? If they are idiot proof, anybody can operate, right? And the end of the day, the employee experience actually goes up, and when the employee experience goes up, automatically your customer experience goes up.
Definitely, most definitely. Yeah, I think that just summed up that question, right? So, in fact, one, that is ease of access. That is, there should be ease of access
Yeah.
both for the customer and even for the agent on the other end answering the call, right? So he should be able to easily access all the data that he requires to answer the customer's queries, and the customer also should be able to easily contact them. Like in fact, like Mr. Ashish mentioned, even during the entire life cycle, the customer should be able to easily contact. They should be on the back of the hand. They should have the number, right? They should. It can be a relationship manager, or it can be a number that they can contact, and they can get in touch with someone. At least until everyone becomes self-efficient. I think we could say it's there's a lot of time for that, right? But yeah, so I think that brings us to the next question. That is, in fact, how do you think? Like we spoke about, these customer expectations are there to stay, right? And they're only going to get bigger and bigger going forward. How do you think, like going forward, cloud telephony or like the use of AI or marrying AI and cloud telephony, how do you think this can help the future requirements? How do you think you can future-proof all your customer expectation? Please, you guys can share your thoughts. We can start with Ashish this time.
Yeah, so as I said, it's become a part of business already, and somewhere customer behavior and adaptation has really helped. Now, from every strategy teams, management teams, is already part of discussion how do you induct it. The old relationship management style has to make ways either for a half-half sort of a thing where AI has to be a part of it. As a business internally within the bank, within my bank also, the discussions are very much there to make it, it was always there to make it technology oriented, but it's just that now it's far more there. And every organization is planning in a way to bring in AI, to bring in bots, to make the whole piece far more personalized while using technology. So the focus, I think, over a period of time of industry is that while whatever has happened from the consumer perspective, this becomes far more personalized with the use of technology. And that's the next question. I think in the next 5 years, we'll find the industry is trying to solve that technology, if backed by people, can become successful to source things, to enable service management, to add new clients, to service existing clients at the same time. Now, how do you solve the personalization with the aid of technology? That's where I believe the next 5 years, where the whole industry will be thinking about.
Definitely. Ankit, your thoughts?
No, I agree with Ashish, right? And I guess the each and every organization has to start, right? If they have not started, they have to start it now, right? And AI, we all know, is a buzzword, right? But the way I look at it, my personal take on AI, Raman, is that AI is useless if you don't have your data in place, right? And to get this kind of a data, in place, you need the cloud, right? So it has to start with a strategy where the companies are moving to cloud. They are creating their data lakes, and on those data lakes, they are leveraging that entire analytics to create that AI, right?
True.
Right. And in India, because of the various dialects and, the kind of various languages that we speak, yes, it's a bit challenging right now, right? But we have to start, right? But if you look at, the Western countries, the technology of conversational AIs combined with speech analytics is actually doing wonders. Think that, I'm an agent in the contact center, right? Yes, I have, the customer 360 there in front of me. I'm talking to the customer. Now, what's happening with AI and speech analytics, which is going on, is, there are solutions where while I'm talking to the customer and I've got a particular screen open, using the voice technology, the speech analytics and AI, the system is prompting me, by analyzing what the sentiments of a customer is, that, hey, Ankit, why don't you use this word? Now, this sentence, this will help. Why don't you talk about this? Why don't you open this particular window or this functionality to actually help the customer? Now, all that is happening because of technology, and that technology is AI, right? But that can only be possible when you look at, your data, because AI is useless when you just put the AI and people say that, okay, get the AI technology in and start expecting great results from day one. It won't happen. It will be a drastic change that you have to take in your organization. The entire strategy has to, undergo a change, and it's a cycle,
Definitely.
right? Where it's going to learn, right? It's a learning process, right? But yes, as Ashish mentioned, this is the future. And if you don't start investing it right now, then you'll be late, right? Conversational AIs combined with speech analytics with your cloud telephony, that's the power.
Definitely, most definitely. Amula, your points?
Yeah. So when you look at AI, there are a couple of things which you actually need to see, because today call center is a place where you have a whole lot of customer data. Thousands and thousands of calls are there, and you have the voice loggers. So like Ankit said, a lot of sentiment analysis can be done. You can clearly identify who are the customers who are unhappy and how do you engage such customers. You also know the customers who are going to be loyal with you and how do you give them special campaigns. So this plays a very, very critical role. Similarly, if at any point of time you know that your agent is making a mistake, such technology can immediately direct the call to a supervisor who will be in a position to guide the customer and ensure that the mistake is undone immediately. So this is from an inbound perspective. But similarly, when you're making outgoing calls to customers for a renewal, there's a lot of things which happens. Most often, when you call a customer, he may not be reachable, which goes into a callback situation. So here again, AI plays a critical role that, based on certain algorithms that you have, you will be able to identify what is the best time that you can reach a customer. So that with that, you can increase your success rate in terms of enriching the contacts which you have with the customers. Similarly, looking at a pattern of renewal, for example, so you will be able to identify which is the best time frame when a customer is approaching you for renewal. So all this with the kind of data that you get from call center, these are quick things which can be enabled and which will help in growth of the business as well as in increase engagement with the customer and of course a wonderful customer experience.
Definitely. Again,
And Raman, one more point here. So when I'm saying, AI and the technology and even telephony, what I also felt is that the future is not restricted to call centers alone. It has to go around to every employee, be it a feet on street salesman, be it a person involved in sourcing, which is a pre-acquisition process, being a person in the local office or a local branch involving in customer lifecycle management, or being a call center, either a reactive call center or a proactive call center, which means either an inbound call center, an outbound call center, either way. So it's going to go into everywhere, and organizations will start thinking is that how their each and every pre-acquisition to life cycle to reactive problem solutions to proactive problem identifications to institutionalizing the whole offering, it has to go on the all way, and it has to become personalized there to make a meaningful sense. That's what I meant.
Definitely. I mean,
I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with Ashish. In fact, in our company, just to give you a live an example, we have exactly done that. All our fleet on street have got tabs. On their tabs they can access the customer 360, right? They have all the tools and powers available to them on that tab. So their office is on the tab, on the go, right? At the same time, if you walk into a branch, the branch also has the same view. Obviously, call centers have the same view. The outbound, sales call contact centers are also there on the same platform, right? So give them a unified experience, because the customer, whether contacted by you or being contacted, it's a complete unified experience that you need to give.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what kind of sums up the entire thing, right? Where you need to give the unified experience to the customer, whether I'm talking to a sales guy, whether I'm talking to an RM, whether I'm talking to a customer support guy, I should still get the same experience. There should not be any break. And for that to happen, I think businesses on the other end should have like all your data and technologies seamlessly integrating with one another. Either you have one platform or you have multiple platforms with seamlessly integrating between each other. I think one of the best ways would be to go through cloud. It's where it's rather easier to integrate, specifically say even cloud telephony for that matter, where you'll be able to easily integrate between each of these. That is one, you can do highly personalized communication, and two, you can also scale at will, like when we spoke about conversational bots and etc. So that way we can actually look at scaling at a larger level. So that way you will be able to address more customers than we do right now. So right now, I can talk to only one person at a time, right? So if you have more conversational bots, your response times will slowly start coming down. You'll have better conversion rates. Your numbers will slowly start going up. I think at least that's a starting point how we can look at it, like smart using of your smart IVRs and to like prompt voice calls to your customers at the right time and etc. Yeah, so I think we can move on to our last question. We can talk about the ever-demanded question: on-prem versus cloud. Yeah, I think that's a question itself. You guys can talk about. We can talk about how we can benefit from both, or how you can use both to basically utilize, like get your efficiency to the fullest. We can just throw some light on how do you think, or what is your experience when it comes to comparing on-prem to a cloud. We can talk from a communication.
Yeah, so Raman, as I said, as I said earlier, I'm a strong believer that yes, cloud is the technology that you need to adopt if you want digital at scale, right? Right. So the entire digital strategy of an organization can fail, if you're not on cloud, right? Because cloud gives you that flexibility, clouds give you that, mammoth scale that you can operate with, right? Right. So as I said, simply putting, if an organization wants to go digital at scale, cloud is the answer, right? You need to find your various, answers to the other, drawbacks that you may see, around that, and need to mitigate that. That's how you need to, and the technologies teams need to come along and find those solutions for yourself, right? But there's no shying away by saying that if you want digital at scale, cloud is the only option. On-prem, digital at scale, it's bound to fail, right? You won't be able to achieve that scalability, level that you really want, your digital, initiatives to take place, right? So that's where, I would say that cloud is the answer, right? And we actually, went on cloud, for our core policy admin as well, and we were, perhaps the first one to do that in the insurance industry, right? Where we said the entire policy admin will be sitting on the cloud, right? So that was a risk as well, right? To go at the first ring, and because people talk about a lot of data security and all those things, right? But you need to, ring fence it, right? There are solutions to ensure that, yes, the data security is not compromised, right? So if you do those right steps, I guess, cloud is the best thing.
Definitely, Ankit. I think, yeah, when I'm talking about both on-prem and cloud, I'm talking not just from voice communication perspective, but also all other services as well, right? All your, be it your HR management or be it your admin management, like like Ankit mentioned, be it your HR, like anything, right? So, Amala, your thoughts?
Yeah. So yeah, like Ankit said, one thing is, yes, cloud is the way ahead. There's no two thoughts about it. It is definitely the way ahead. Like, while you might have your own data centers and manage on-prem, but there are a lot of, in terms of infrastructure and, what are the skill sets required to manage an on-prem. It actually is very difficult for a, industry which does not, for which it is not a core job, right? And when it goes to cloud, one thing that the companies need to actually focus on is they need to be very, very prudent in selecting the right partner, because it is very essential that adherence to the regulations is required. If not, you will get penalized heavily. And also you also need to make sure that the security of the customer data, because we are handling sensitive customer data. So the security of that is definitely, something which needs to be managed. And I'm sure organizations have their own capabilities of evaluating the partners before going ahead with a partnership, so that, at the end of it, it is a win-win situation for all.
Definitely, very well put across. Ashish, you can.
Yeah. So this is a question actually where I have to answer it as a user, and I believe it's not an easy answer. I personally feel it's not really an easy answer. I've got into debates of on-prem versus cloud, and I have myself chosen on-prem at certain points in time. And I think the answer has to come from a businessman here, which is, say, for example, is Excel is one of the businessmen and I'm one of the users. So I'll tell you why I feel it's a difficult question for a consumer to answer and why it is difficult. So everybody knows cloud is definitely superior technology because it's evolving technology. You not only participate in a software sitting right now, you also participate in a software which will upgrade itself over a period of time, besides offering you full advantages of scale in case you become successful. But one point that you said, Raman, is the existing on-prem solution you have. Now, when you find that you tweak an existing on-prem solution, you can get it implemented cheaper. So at existing point in time, if you are an organization which is already on-prem, what would be cheaper? A cloud solution to a extended application that you want, or a on-prem solution being tweaked to cater to that demand? You find that most of the times on-prem is there. Now, even if you are choosing, for example, a new organization, and that's where I believe a manufacturer or a businessman like you has to play a role is, most of the time cloud seems to be a very cheap solution to begin with, but then that's where, you know, the corporate client is very, very different than an individual client. He would not get into it just because it's easy to get in. The detailed analysis when you do over a 3-year, 4-year cost, some of the times that I've felt it doesn't become an easy decision anymore. You rather find that it might be cheaper to operate on an on-prem solution. About the risk, I think those were the debates that the early years when the cloud had started. Somewhere they've settled down now. Somewhere I don't think risk is anymore an issue. I think it's about who or which businessman brings in a sort of, what do you call it, disruption in this business, and while proposing it and creating their corporate clients, and also proving it that not only it makes sense right now, even if people have on-prem basis cost, but it makes sense over a period of 3 to 5 years, so that a businessman finds that it becomes a no-brainer. And once they taste it, just because the whole solution itself evolves and improves itself over a period of time, it becomes a wonderful product. And I think that's where the journey of a businessman like Exotel, they can improve out. And as a user, it becomes easier for people to choose on-prem versus cloud. That's what I feel.
Definitely, Ashish. I think that's very well put across, right? That is, in fact, I have very similar thoughts on the same. I mean, though I'm from Exotel, the idea is, I think, given the current reality where most of them already have an on-prem solution, I think the best way would be to somehow marry both of them. That is, have cloud and on-prem solution where they can seamlessly integrate with each other to basically leverage the fullest from both of them, right? So that is, you could, just to give you an idea, just to give a real life example, where you could look to use cloud for all your on-field agents and all your work from home agents, while your office, where most of your calling happens and most of your cost happens, can still happen on-prem. So that way it can still be a win-win scenario for both the business and for your customer, right? So that is something, at least what, sorry? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so that is something, in fact, that we've been experiencing with most companies. So that way, like, what do I mean by seamlessly integrating with each other? So they should have APIs, and they should be able to integrate with cross-platform more easily to provide the business like a 360-degree view of what is happening. Like, in fact, that is what we spoke about throughout the conversation as well, right? That is giving the ease of access to the agent on the other side, answering the call, everything. Like, imagine me, I'm the agent who's answering the call. Say I have, okay, before he converted into a full-time paying customer, these are all the calls and these are all the transcripts. And you can also use voice analytics to basically give you a summary of all of them. Say after converting these many times, he's being engaged by the RM, and then he's raised these many queries, and they've been solved in so times. If I can have a view or a summary of all of this from, again, I'm talking purely from a voice standpoint, obviously you'll have other data as well. If something of this can work with both an on-prem and a cloud-based solution, because you have different teams working here, right? You have your customer support team maybe working on on-prem, you have your on-field team maybe working on cloud-based recording solutions. So when you can marry them and when they can integrate with each other, I think that will provide a win-win solution, at least as a starting point. You don't have to completely move to cloud per se, but you can still work with what we have. So those are again my thoughts. I think this debate can just keep going on, but guys, if you have any final thoughts, you guys can just share. I think we can conclude with it.
No, I guess you sum it up pretty well, Raman, right? And like most of us said, there is no right or wrong to a particular thing, right? You need to evaluate and see what works for you and your customers, right? And accordingly move ahead, right? While there are some inherent benefits that you get with next technology, right? But you need to evaluate at the right time and see that what really works for you, right? Because it could be possible that a particular solution which is working for your organization and your customers may not work in any other industry or the other kind of customers that you have, right? So you need to wait accordingly and then take those right steps, right? But it has to start, right? People have to take that call and take that risk to say yes, let's try it out, right? You have to have those champion challenges in place to say that yes, let's challenge the status quo, right, and move ahead.
Yeah, Raman and Ankit, I agree with you, both of you. In fact, what I meant is that cloud is definitely the future. So 20 years down the line, I don't think people taking up by people getting to this debate. This question may be irrelevant 20 years down the line. So what I meant by saying is that 20-year timeline where the question becomes irrelevant. How fast that the question become irrelevant is what I was trying to address.
Right.
Can the question become irrelevant in 5 years? Can the question become irrelevant in 3 years? Can the question become irrelevant in 10 years? Or will it take 20 years? That's where I meant that if the question itself has to become irrelevant in maybe at a fast time frame, then a disruption is important. But it's the ultimate future. That's where the new projects is going to go to for sure, because the question of existing on-prem doesn't arise.
Of course, definitely.
Yeah.
Amala, your final thoughts on the topic?
So yeah, cloud is the way ahead. That's for sure. Considering that business agility and the ability to scale up is something very, very critical to processes and for growth, and especially to give the customer a flawless experience. So I guess as we go ahead, cloud would definitely become the new normal for all of us.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Amala. Again, thank you so much, guys, for sharing all your thoughts. I'm sure it was a valuable brainstorming session for everyone who's attended here. I think we can open up to a Q&A session.
Yes.
Guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hands. I think like Ekta has put up a set of guidelines. You can either raise your hands or please feel free to mute yourself and ask questions, or you can, I think, put up on the chat.
Raman, we had one question from Riaz. Riaz, you can ask a question. You can introduce yourself and please put your question forward to the panelist.
Hello, my name is Riaz and I'm founder of Indrox.org. मेरा question रमन जी से है कि nowadays अभी cloud का इतना ग्रोथ तो हो रहा है, लेकिन सामने ही ऑपोजिशन में मतलब ट्रू कॉलर और ऐसे सब एप्लीकेशन हैं जो नंबर्स ब्लॉक कर देती है या फिर वो ऑटो स्पैम है, तो फिर उसके लिए एक्सोटेल क्या मतलब वो करता है कि
Okay, hi Riaz. I mean, just to reiterate your question, I think I lost you in between there. Just please correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's very specific to a particular use case I think you're talking about, where how can probably cloud help with respect to voice calls being marked as spam and etc. when the organization is trying to call them. Is that what you're trying to ask, if I'm not wrong? Hello?
Yes, that's what he was trying to ask regarding the spam. Yeah.
All right. Sure. Again, this works in different ways. How currently it works is basically cloud telephony generally partners up with. So in fact, how is spam marked right now? Right? It is either marked on your most famous application that you use, that is Truecaller, or now the operators themselves are looking to like analyze the incoming call and mark it as spam. And like Samsung is doing it, your iPhones are doing it already. So in fact, you don't really need a Truecaller anymore, at least to identify the incoming call, right? So and how is cloud telephony is actually working with respect to marking spam. So what we are doing, or what cloud telephony in general is doing, is partnering with each of them. That is partnering with, say, Truecaller, partnering with your operators individually to give the customer better experience. That is if the calls are going to come from, say, let's take Bajaj Allianz for example, all the numbers that they use, the virtual, the cost of virtual, so all the virtual numbers that is used for them to call the customers will be marked as priority calls. If you have ordered on Zomato, you will actually Zomato priority, and it can't be marked as spam. Even if it is marked as spam, you'll get enlisted and whitelisted as Zomato priority calls. Similarly on you would have seen this. So this is actually us Exetel basically doing a partnership with Truecaller and providing that kind of a service. So that is something that, in fact, that is one of the things that most cloud telephony players do, or at least Exetel does, to basically improve the pickup rates. That is contextual calling, where we try and give context on what is the incoming call about. Again, this works in some cases. It doesn't really work in some cases where it is respective collections and your sales calls. But depending on the problems, I think it can be used accordingly. I hope that answers your questions, here.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Riaz. So, do we have a few more questions we can take in? If we have any question, you can raise your hand. Okay. Raman, I think we can come to the conclusion. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you all the panelists. So to conclude, we have understood now how cloud communication offers a simple solution to various problems arising, and how we can meet the rising expectations of their customers and create a seamless experience that would make them feel valued, and what are the ways to engage with customers proactively at different stages of our journey. So I would like to thank our partner Exetel for being here and sharing great insights on cloud telephony. I would like to thank all the thought leaders, Mr. Ankit, Ms. Amala, and Mr. Ashish, for taking out your precious time and being here. Not missing our lovely audience. Thank you guys for being here, and I hope you all had a great session. And we shall be updating the video link on our website shortly. And you will be getting a feedback form from my team. So request you to please share the feedback form. Kindly follow us at LinkedIn, Insta, FB, Twitter, for future webinar and even updates. I think we have before, but I came to the conclusion, but then we have a person raising his hand and asking a question, Raman. So Mr. Alok, can you please ask your question?
Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, I am Alok Phadte. I work at Tata Capital as a collection manager. So my question is basically related to my field, as in, we have a lot of problem communicating to the customer, because see, when you are selling something, the customer is always willing to talk to you, but then when you're taking something back, when you're when the loan is being recovered, so we face a lot of problem communicating to them and finding a solution to that. So what is your suggestion to the meaning my question is to the panelists, what is your solution to this?
Definitely.
So Alok, I'll give it a shot. While collections is not where insurance basically comes into the play, but I'll talk about more of what I have seen with some of the companies in financial sector, right? During this pandemic, actually, what I saw is that conversational AIs, on the outbound front, has actually helped a lot of companies, right? So you may want to try that out, right? And it has actually worked in your initial buckets. If I'm right, that's the word that you guys use in collections, right?
Okay.
Your initial buckets, you can actually put that into the complete automation, right? Where before you call it you call it PDD calling, right? Payment due date calling, right? Right. So payment due date calling, or your X date calling, all that can be automated through the conversational AIs, right? And I have seen, actually, I'll not name those credit card companies or the banks, but I've actually seen they actually getting benefited out of it, right? While they actually save cost, but because of that, they were able to get the promise to pay, right? Because I guess you also look at one of the metrics at promise to pay with your PDD calling, right? So they actually were able to get more of promise to pay
Correct, sir.
from
Yes,
the
yes.
customer, right? Right. So you may want to try that out because in practical, I've actually seen many companies getting benefited out of that.
Definitely. In fact, to add to Ankit's point,
Sure, sir.
yeah, thanks, Alok, for the question. In fact, to add to Ankit's point, what we've seen that works is combining both. That is, most companies do manual conversation. That is, they try to call. It's like an outbound call. They have an outbound collection team who calls the customers, if I'm not wrong, right? So combining both of them, that is, like he mentioned, you have your 30-day DPT, you have your 60-day DPT, or your 15-day DPT, and etc. You have your buckets, and what you could potentially do, you can automate these processes, and soon after the automation, you can automatically connect them to your collection agents. So it can happen during the automation process, or it can happen after. Like, to give you an example, like say you have your 30-day DPT bucket, you can just automate everyone. That is, you can send them a highly personalized voice calls, like conversation calls to these guys. And even if it is 30% responded, right, that is 30% is already giving you collections, and that is, you're saving that much effort for your manual team, right? So only the remaining 70% will have to get transferred to your other team. And in fact, even to bump up the response rate itself, you can do multiple things. That is, you can call them multiple times over with using different numbers. And again, it's a matter of, there's a fine line between spamming and actually reminding them. But if you can do that, if you can understand that line where we are not spamming them but just reminding them with enough number of retries and enough number of calls to them, and then we can transfer them to your manual team, who can then take it over. So that will still increase your entire collection rate itself by at least 20-30%. So yeah, those are my thoughts. At least that's how we've been working with some of the companies.
In fact, you could also look at doing a live agent transfer. If the customer is picked up and he has a query, you could even transfer such calls to a live agent and close it completely.
Exactly. Correct. On the same automated call itself, if he's interested in closing the deal, or if he's interested in paying, you can actually transfer him to a live agent, and he can guide him through the entire collection process. Alok, I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that was what I was looking for. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Alok. So before we end, I would again like to wait for 30 seconds so that if any question pops up, we can take it. So guys, do we have any question coming in from your ends? We still have the panelists and everyone present. They could answer your queries. Okay. I think we are done with the questions. So again, to conclude, I would like to thank every one of you, all the panelists, all the thought leaders, for being here, taking out your time on weekends and adding value to the topic. Thank you, Raman. Thank you, Exetel, for being with us for the event. And the audiences, thank you for being patient and having your questions answered by our speakers. Please follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Analytics. We do a lot of event on various topics. And we'll be sharing a short feedback form as well with you guys, and we'll look forward to have your feedback. My team has already done with it with you, and would love to have your feedbacks on the same, because that helps us to improve. Yes, thank you everyone once again, and stay safe and have a nice weekend.
Thank you guys.
You too. Take care everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Stay safe. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.